Hey,
Yeah,
so listen, I want to start with a complete absurdity that I hope is obvious to the world, but just in case it's not, I would like to pose a question to you. Uh,
sure.
Dale uses the standings to go into seating. So at what point do you meet with the judges to pass those standings out and then give them each their numbers so that prelims order is exactly the same as those standings? When do you do that?
I'm surprised that you're able to get through that with a straight face.
I know, right?
Um, yeah, I talk to instructors all year long about the seating, and its sole purpose is to get people into rounds at championships. Judges don't look at seedings. They don't reference them. A matter of fact, I was looking at my notes this morning about Dayton, and I have in there a bullet point to talk about how things change from the regional season. And this is a fresh weekend and a fresh contest, and standings don't matter. And I know I've said it a few times to instructors who got a little perturbed with me when I said during the regional season, the rankings don't matter. Now, that's a bit of hyperbole because during the day it matters, but my point is it doesn't matter going into championships. I mean, I can pull out documents from the last 5 or 10 years that show the third ranked team coming in finishes 12th and the 47th team finishes 5th. And it truly is a new weekend and a new contest. And seedings don't matter. They really, truly don't, not going into this.
That's awesome. I love hearing that because, my Carl's Gator girls from Carl Lowe's School of Jazz, Tap, Baton, and Tumbling, they're ranked 15th. And
Yes.
so, I was really counting on them being in the finals at 15th, no matter what. So what you're not saying that they can only go up. Like, I mean, of course I think that they can only go up. There is a
Right.
problem in the standings, but my group can only go up. So you mean that they actually can go down and be out of finals also, because the Gator girls are pretty good this year, Curtis.
Yes, unfortunately, it's all based on, this is the only time all year where the whole class is in the same room with the same panel on the same day with the same performance. And not only is it going to be different from the regional season, but it'll be different from day to day because the purpose of each contest at championships is different. And so, yes, it will go up, it will go down, it will go sideways, it will go diagonally based on the performance of the day.
Love that. So walk me through real quickly the priority of the judge during those qualifying rounds. What are they told before they go in?
Yeah,
Besides the Gator girls might not make finals, which is very upsetting.
they are their main responsibility, their prime responsibility is to move the teams that need to go on to the next round to move them on. So they have to look at those thresholds. So let's just take a threshold that says we're going to take 24 into finals and we have 36 or semifinals. So their job is to really be hypersensitive to teams around their 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 threshold in their caption. Remember that the system picks the winner and captions don't pick the winner, but they all have to be keenly aware that their main job is those thresholds of promoting and moving guards to the next round. Same for semis moving into finals. And it's not until we get into finals really where, based on that performance, we're going to rank them in order, top to bottom.
Yeah. It's certainly an imperfect science as we go with so many variables. And we also put out a little video that I'm just going to remind everybody about, minute 8. We put it out last year. Dale and I referenced it on our last video about how scores have to open up so there's room for judges to place people in what they feel is the correct order and leave enough room in that cutoff neighborhood to make that happen. So refer to that video for why scores down. And generally, Curtis, I'm sure you'll agree and acknowledge that scores are lower at your qualifying rounds at prelims than they were at your regionals in the season before. Is that correct?
It is correct. And I was just reflecting on what I just said. I don't want people to think that judges only worry about those threshold guards, and then they just go, "Oh well, I don't know if this is going to be first or 10th." They're putting them in neighborhoods because they come into rounds, right? And you're having to compare something that happens 5 and 6, 7 hours in some cases apart. So you're getting them in general neighborhoods, but your primary focus is on those threshold neighborhoods.
Awesome. That makes total sense. You got to get it right. And that's
Yep.
why we have 3 rounds of competition to get it right. The bottom line is to get everybody in the right order and to pick the right winner.
Yep.
Um, so, one thing that happens that we don't, as instructors, look back at the judge community, and I have a friend that always reminds me of this, which is good, he also happens to judge. But we know what it's like when performers get out and they get into these high pressure situations, and things that would typically be solid and bulletproof then become not the catch, or it becomes the half catch, or it becomes the fumble to the ground, or worse yet, it becomes that slider that goes 20 yards to the left and then ends up out of bounds. So the poor performer can't go retrieve the equipment or anything. And we
Yep.
forget that judges have their version of those things too. Sometimes they're, missing people inside a neighborhood. Sometimes there's a red circle, which is kind of judge language where you go back and look at that. And sometimes it is the slider where they just miss the call, and we deal with that, especially at regionals. And so I guess that leads me to the question, how does a judge get a championships assignment? How do they get invited to the big dance? Because even our youngest judges have like 11 years experience, in their local circuit. So nobody's bulletproof.
No, and there are a lot of considerations that go into who is invited to championships. Um, we have had the last 2 or 3 Academy of students that have been absolutely spectacular, and those people have a decade of experience going in, and we're trying to get new people in there, people that we feel have the experience and the expertise to handle that. I'm trying to work people into a rotation, so once they go to championships, it's not just the golden standard and you expect to come in every single year. Just trying to get fresh looks and fresh people in there. And then that also goes hand in hand with when we do get someone new in there, and really it could be anyone, but someone new in there and they do have a drop, or we perceive it to be a drop, just like you were talking about. We have safety nets in place. We have protocols in place so that maybe it's a bobble, but it's not sliding across the floor, right? And we have non-working leads at these contests that are watching scores come in. When judges feel like in their caption, they feel like they all of a sudden they were at an 18-5, and all of a sudden a team comes out and they want to give a 17-0, but their gut says, oh my God, I'm not really sure. They can call the lead judge over and just bounce it off of them. I mean, I have found that 99% of the time, they just want an affirmation that their gut feeling was right.
Yeah.
I could count on one hand the number of times that I've probably had to say, well, have you considered this, or have you considered that? When a judge does fumble, it usually is because they're over or undervaluing a point of comparison. And so sometimes they may need a little bit of redirection. Hopefully it's not much, but yes, just like the performers, we also have breaks and bobbles, and hopefully by the time we get to championships, those are very few and far between.
That's part of the place where our worlds, you and me, cross, because so much of those guidelines came from, I don't know, an older steering committee, but we talked about that in terms of quality control and why those lead judges are so important in those moments. And they have the tools to be able to watch these numbers as they come in real time. And you, as the chief judge,
Yeah.
also have that ability, though you are working at another show at times. But, I think the boundary was no prescribed number, no prescribed placement. That's where the line is. So no one goes back and then says, "Oh no, 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 you're wrong. The Karl's Gator Girls have to be fifth because they need to make finals, and it's your job in this caption to do that.
Yeah,
And they need
never.
to be at a 98."
Right.
Right?
Right. We're there
That
to
doesn't
support.
happen.
No, no. We're there to support the judge. When the judge has a question, right? When they have a sense of insecurity, basically. I will tell you that judges feel just as much pressure and just as much anxiety as you do going into championships. I mean, I can recall a few years back having I think this person was maybe her second time on the panel, and she called me down and basically was in tears, had boxed herself in as far as numbers go and said, Curtis, I don't know what to do. And literally, I felt so bad for her. And I just told her to get through it. Wait till this round is over and I will help you through it. And I was the safety net. I had to
Yeah.
talk her off the cliff. So, I mean, yes, there's pressure and anxiety. A lot of it is self-induced, but I mean, they want to do the best job they can. They want to get it right. They want to get it perfect.
Yeah.
And so we're there to support them, not to prescribe anything, not to remind them of the fifth place Gator girls. That is not our job.
I will tell you, as instructor, not Karl Lowe from the Gator Girls, but an instructor in general, I appreciate that they have the same anxiety build up that instructors do. It's an important weekend and it does define an entire season. And it's important for us as instructors as well as judges to get it right. I appreciate their understanding the gravity of the moment, because from our perspective, a lot of times it feels like, especially if they're pleasant, if they're doing a really good job with their commentary, that you don't hear it. It feels like maybe they're taking a step back and just kind of letting it happen. And oh, it's a long day. You're one more of a million color guards I'm going to see that day. But I really do appreciate hearing that, Curtis. That's really huge.
Yeah, and
Uh,
just to let
go
me
ahead.
just dovetail on
Yeah.
that. I mean, I've heard occasionally this past regional season that sometimes judges seem disinterested, and I will let you know that they are digging in. I mean, for the last few years, we've been pressuring them, not pressuring them, encouraging them to speak less and say more. And so it's a bit of a transition, and I don't want anyone to misinterpret some judge watching a phrase developed and then speaking as being disinterested. They've got long days and they will get tired, but they know that their job is to be enthusiastic and to dig in and do the best job possible, whether it's the first guard of the day or the 70th guard of the day. I mean, that's our expectation.
That's a great point. And I know that different captions also have different requirements of their commentary and, can create a fatigue. Certainly those downstairs guys, they get tired really, really fast. It's a hard job to run the commentary that's necessary. Hey, so you talked about a lead judge and a working lead judge and a non-working lead judge. And when we get to championships, to the Dayton experience, every lead judge at each site is a non-working lead judge. Is that right?
It is correct. We've worked really hard over the last few years, and the administration has been awesome in terms of granting us the flexibility. We're bringing in 40 judges to championships this year. Last year, we brought in 35 judges, and that allows for the workday to not be as strenuous. Um, so instead of working at Cincinnati till 11 o'clock at night and driving an hour back to the hotel and then turning around and getting up at 6 a.m., we have brought in more judges to make the workday a little bit more manageable. Well, along those lines, we don't have working lead judges. We now have non-working lead judges at every contest. And their job is, like I was talking about before, is to provide the safety net, to supply the support for the judges when necessary, and even to supply the support that an instructor may need at a site. It would be like a regional, that if you need to talk to the lead judge at your site, go to the contest administrator and they will find the non-working lead judge if you have a question about something.
Give me an example of why an instructor would want to talk to the lead judge. I know I'm going to share a little anecdote for everybody first before you answer. I have a former student that used to teach a color guard that was pretty powerful, and they felt like at every regional they go to after prelims, they would look for the low judge, whoever gave them the lowest number, and then go complain to the lead judge at that regional about that low number. And at times, not even considering that the lead judge might have been the low number. So I would question the strategy in that moment. But however, they would go in and instead of waiting for the evaluation form, they would go in and basically file a complaint in person to the lead judge. Once we get to championships, well, first of all, in that situation, would the lead judge then go and what, fire the judge that did it, or would they go and tell them their number was wrong? And Karl said the Gator girls should be scoring 5 points higher, so I need you to give them 5 more points. Does that happen ever?
Um, I think that it rarely happens, less than 1/10 of 1%. And in order for that to happen, I mean, it would have to be a dramatic, extreme situation or circumstance. For example, there's a round of 10 Scholastic A's. A Scholastic A team gets ordinals of 1 across the board, and in one caption, say GE, they get a number 10. And so I may, if I'm the non-working or even the working judge, I may go and ask that judge, hey, GE1 and GE2, you guys kind of went north and south, can you just talk to me about what you saw and what you valued? And again, I'm going to go back to over or undervaluing a point of comparison. I have found over the years that is the impetus. That's what gets people to where they are. It's not that, oh, the Gator girls came out in pink and I hate the color pink, and now I'm going to bomb them. That's not what happens. They just over or under sampled, and that's usually the case.
So when you get to championships, because the neighborhoods are bigger, the rounds are huge, the need for the judge to compare across hours and hours and hours is really pretty intimidating. If instructors thought about it, they would understand the pressure that comes with that. But also because those neighborhoods are huge, there may be a likelihood of first to 10th. Maybe there are more situations that may call for that at championships than certainly on the regional level. So
Yeah.
where it could be right, I'm not suggesting that it must be right, but that it could be right. And it really means that you would have sat and watched the same contest and been able to have kind of an impression yourself. But what is the expectation when an instructor comes to you at championships? Why would they come? And then what happens? What's the reasonable expectation to come from that meeting with you or
Yeah.
their other non-working lead judge?
Yeah. I mean, usually a reason for an instructor to find the non-working lead is say something like, hey, the commentary file didn't come out with my DA judge. Could you look into it? Or, hey, I got a penalty of 1.5 and I'm not sure why that happened. Can you look into that for me? Or, something went wrong, like they're producing their own sound design and all of a sudden the speaker didn't work and something went wrong, and I just want to make sure that the judges know that oftentimes it's just anxiety. They want to talk to someone, and I'm there to be that sounding board. Sometimes I'll pull out the recap and I'll say, hey, even though the judge had you in 7th, did you look at the 10ths? They had you in 7th by 8/10. Have a better run tomorrow, and that ordinal of a number 8 isn't going to matter because everything is so close. So it's kind of a combination depending on what they need, and it's to reassure them that we have a fair playing field, that no one is out to get them, that no one is bombing them, and
Yeah.
to really convince them that the system is working, and be a safety net, not only for the judge, but also for the instructor. Sometimes
Yeah.
the instructor needs a safety net.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, from the instructor perspective, I really, really appreciate that. I have seen you have been, though you make the assignments, you're really good with, you, myself, and Dale work as very, very close partners on almost every aspect. And in our autonomous circles, there are places where we overlap. And there is a place in those 3 overlapping circles where all 3 of us overlap in the same spot. Um, and so you've been generous enough to kind of share your logic behind assignments. I saw the spreadsheet that you sent to us, even though those aren't out of your sketch and your draft that you've got. And I am amazed at the amount of thoughtfulness that you put into making those assignments across all classes and all rounds and how all that happens. And what I really loved that you're also looking at prior years to see what your championship judges have judged and kind of factoring that into where their assignment is to kind of spread the wealth. because all classes are certainly important, and every unit deserves, a fair shot at as much success as possible. And so I want to point that out, that you take great efforts to make sure that happens. And there's really no way where you could do that, considering all those things, to pack the house for Karl's Gator Girls from Karl's School of Jazz, Tap, Baton, and Tumbling, because they should win, of course. And I'm your buddy, and I've got your personal phone number, and I send you Christmas cards. What keeps me from calling you in the middle of the night? Why can't I call you? Okay, I don't have to see you at the show. Why can't I call you in the middle of the night and talk to you about the Gator Girls?
Well, we have an even playing field, and I'm glad that you referenced the huge Rubik's Cube that is World Championships and all the things that we do need to consider. And there are a few things that are not on that spreadsheet that I have to consider. I have lots of GE judges, and they run the gamut from the emotional to the intellectual to the aesthetic. And even though they have a job to do, and they're to weigh each point of comparison evenly. I mean, I'm not naive enough to think that we're all people. We all are drawn by certain things. And I have to know that if I've got a panel of 4 GE judges and 3 of them have an affinity to reptiles, I'm not going to put them on the gator panel, because all of a sudden I've got to be aware of that, right? I've got to put the
Absolutely.
guy I've got to put the guy that is going to cry over the show about lost letters, along with the guy that is going to like all the intellectual
Yeah.
lines and dimensionality, versus the guy that loves, or the gal that loves, the vibrant colors. And so
Yeah.
trying to
Right.
balance all of that, so we have the most even playing field possible. I have instructors over the last week or so email me and ask, hey, you cannot put, Judge X, Y, and Z on the panel, because if you do, he's going to bomb us, and you can't do that. It would ruin the season for us. Well, I don't think that happens. I mean, I will weigh everything into consideration, but one judge isn't going to do that. And like we talked about, they're super hypersensitive going into championships. They want to do the best job possible. So yeah, it's the even playing field. And with that said, knowing that if you produce, or if your kids happen to drop and happen to have a bad run in prelims, semis, or finals, it's going to show on the recap somewhere,
Yep.
right? The days of having a bad run and still finishing wherever you did, I think those days have gone away. You have to be bulletproof, as I often hear you say,
Yeah.
in order to get through all 3 rounds in the best possible light. And so we've done our training, and I know that the teams have done their training as well.
Yeah, there's so many color guards, and the more important statement to make is there are so many great color guards that for everyone, I mean, we try to avoid that artificial success, because every time there's an artificial success, there's an artificial failure attached to it. And certainly someone is going to turn in the performance that's necessary when all of a sudden you find that, the stars weren't aligned for you. That's just part of the nature of competing. You did bring up a quick point, and something we've had to wrestle with recently. So I guess I'm just going to do a little quick thing. So there's so many ways that a general effect judge can, live an impression. They have to go through a little bit of analysis as well, where they have to reference the sheet, but they do get to live in an impression, because they get to be at times the audience proxy. But the line that has to be remembered is that they're the informed audience proxy. They're the one that's supposed to know a lot. And in some of our marching arts cousins, what they do is they leave these GE judges locked in a cave, and then let them come out for, finals or championships, so that they can really empathize with an audience with the potential newness. Now, that's never been the case with us. In fact, the steering committee has spoken very clearly about what we feel is the liability that comes with that. in our activity. Let me just clarify. And we do talk about judges because so many of our people do judge in the other marching arts with the marching band and drum corps. And then they come into us and they carry some of those experiences with them. And we have worked to insulate, isolate, and really make sure that they understand the context. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the judges coming in and kind of wanting to apply these foreign concepts, thinking it's improving their objectivity when they're doing the job? Do you address that at all? Because I know when you get to championships, it may make a difference.
Um, well, we talk about how we are different from our marching cousins, and we talk about the different applications and the different philosophies. And to your point, there's not one judge sitting in the seats at finals that has not seen your color guard at least once. I mean, my goal is to get them in there through the regional season, through exposure, at least twice, so that they're not having that fresh read in semis. But in some cases, it's unavoidable.
Yeah,
But our promise is that in finals, the 10 people that are sitting there have viewed the color guard at least once. Now, that's
that
not
weekend, at
that
least once
weekend.
that weekend.
That's right.
Yeah,
And
that's great.
that's not to say that, they've given out a promise ring and that in prelims in a round of 70 they had you fifth, and coming into finals, well, they had you fifth in that round 2 days ago, they're going to have me fifth again. There are too many circumstances. There are too many situations where we have to judge the contest of the day. We have to make sure that now that in finals where they're in neighborhoods and they're stacked up, we I know you already talked about the numbers being deflated after each round, but we have that glass ceiling. We have that box six, and we've had a discussion all year long about box five and what it means to get into box five. And so there are just so many attributes that really play into account into that question, that we continue to train and remind and discuss those things at every prejudge meeting going into Dayton.
Great. That's awesome. Curtis, it's exhausting to know, and then I imagine for others to imagine the layers and the complexities that go in with your job. And I know that there's a big portion of it that's not fun, but I know that by the time you get to championships, as you leave, and of course, there's always things to look at and reassess for next year and stuff. But I know that, we leave feeling, feeling good about ourselves.
Yep.
The opportunities that come with being at championships, not just for instructors and their willingness to establish a community, but for judges also. And I think it's important to remind instructors that judges don't see themselves as opponents. And so many times an instructor will see a judge as on the other side of something, and in an opponent, something that is a barrier to their success or forward progression. And we have worked really hard in the time that you and I have worked together, along with Dale, to make sure that judges are seen as partners in the competitive process. And so thank you for that and for having your team do that. And any last words from you before we hit the big show?
Just to, keep doing what you're doing and keep pushing to the very end. It's not over till it's over. And we're just so forward to looking at incredible performances, like you said, the performances and the progress from the regional season and even from year to year is just astonishing and amazing. And just keep up the great work.
Awesome. Thank you, Curtis. I appreciate you, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks.